Please, the non-controversial reading of this calendar.
President, if we could go to the controversial reading of the calendar.
Yes. Secretary will read.
Calendar number 1548 by member of the Assembly O'Donnell, Assembly Print 8520, enact amend the Domestic Relations Law.
Who's this match? Senator Duane, for an explanation.
What this bill will do is say that we are family in a way that no other word can, and that word is marriage. Marriage is one of the few times where people make a public promise of wrong bill. But still.
This is a chapter amendment.
All right. It's still the same. It's not so very. It's interestingly not so very different.
What?
Okay. So,
Senator Duane.
briefly,
Senator Duane.
with my
Mr. President, if
grab.
Senator Duane would be kind enough to yield, I'd be more than happy to explain.
The senator has yielded.
Thank you.
Senator Slam.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, it almost seems like light years ago that myself and Senator Hannan and Senator Lanza were asked to engage the governor and his staff in regard to the issues of religious exemptions as provided in the what I'll term the bill in chief. This proposes to amend that bill. And let me first say I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the very active role of Governor Cuomo. He was not merely active, but certainly sensitive both to the dual issues of religious freedoms and the importance of equality in terms of the purposes of this bill. What's important about this bill is that it contains a number of additions and a number of changes, and very, very critically important is the presence of an inseverability clause at the conclusion of the bill. So let me start off, if I might, by saying what has been added to this mix and to this bill. And I think, first and foremost, you must understand that the purpose was to ensure religious exemptions, to assure that organized religions, that benevolent associations, and not-for-profit associations or corporations affiliated with or controlled by religious corporations would not be subject not merely to civil actions, but also to government actions. So if you will bear with me, if you look at the bill, we start off with notwithstanding any state, local, or municipal law, rule, regulation, ordinance, or other provision of law to the contrary. Well, state, local, or municipal law, rule, regulation, ordinance to the contrary is new language. And what is the purpose of that? The purpose is to ensure that there shall be no local law or no other law of this state that might be in conflict with this law that would supersede the exceptions or exemptions, more appropriately exemptions, that are provided in this chapter. Concerns had been expressed that there might be municipal action, there might be county action, there might be the possibility of conflicts with other provisions of law. Clearly, the purpose here is to ensure that whenever conflicts there might be, those conflicts are resolved in favor of the religious exemption. Religious exception. Now, in addition to the categories that were provided in the initial proposal or the bill in chief, we've added not-for-profit corporations operated, supervised, or controlled by a religious corporation or any employee thereof being managed, directed, or supervised by or in conjunction with a religious corporation, benevolent order, or not-for-profit corporation. The importance was to expand protections to those, not merely churches, synagogues, other religions under the religious corporation law, but also to provide those, in effect, ancillary and related associations and not-for-profits that they share that same protection. And it goes on to say that they shall not be required to provide services, accommodations, advantages, facilities, goods, or privileges. The addition to the, again, I'll refer to it as the bill in chief, is the term services or goods. And while the bill in chief, or the bill being amended, provided that that it did not create any civil claim or cause of action, there was great concern expressed among those representing churches and religious organizations that they could well find themselves being punished by the state in some fashion. If you look to the law of Connecticut, the statute in Connecticut, and the statute in New Hampshire, they added language that wasn't contained in this particular bill, or the bill in chief, and they said in their language that the state could not penalize or withhold benefits with regard to such religious corporation, benevolent order, or not-for-profit. We have expanded that to also include discriminate, so that if an affiliated organization, and I won't name any, but if a not-for-profit corp that is affiliated with or has a religious connection or is being operated under the umbrella of, in relation to, a religious corporation, a church, they cannot be penalized if, for example, they have ancillary services such as child care, daycare, senior centers, in terms of their ability to obtain grant monies, their ability to be ensured that there are, in responding to an RFP, that they will not be summarily rejected because of the fact that they do not recognize, nor does their religious doctrine, nor their religious practice or practices permit them to recognize gay marriages. If you look at the second paragraph, and the second paragraph in part is a restatement of the human rights law, which the language that prefaces that paragraph is new. Again, it's a notwithstanding provision, and it notwithstands any state, local, or municipal law, or rule, regulation, ordinance, or other provision of law to the contrary. And the reason that language has been added is to make sure that there are no encroachments on Section 296.11 of the executive law, again, sometimes referred, at least in part to, as the human rights law. Again, the concern being that there might be encroachments in some other state statute, or, every bit as importantly, if not more so, by some local action by a county, a city, or any other municipality. The other changes that are included are the fact that nothing in this chapter in any way, shape, or form shall be deemed or construed to limit the protections and exemptions otherwise provided religious organizations under Section 3, Article 1 of our state constitution. Two more points which I would have to make. The initial legislative proposal went so far as to say that a clergyman or a minister did not have to solemnize a marriage, and the refusal to do so would not create a civil claim or cause of action. We similarly thought it important to ensure the protection of churches, clergymen, synagogues, rabbis, affiliated, as we did above, by providing that the state or local government could not penalize, withhold benefits, or discriminate against such clergyman or minister. And lastly, and every bit as importantly, and perhaps even most importantly, there is contained in this language in Section 5A on page 2, lines 35 through 39, what is called an inseverability clause. And it basically speaks for itself. It says that this act is to be construed as a whole, and all parts of it are to be read and construed together. If any part of this act shall be adjudged by any court of competent jurisdiction to be invalid, the remainder of this act shall be invalidated. Nothing precludes or should be construed to affect a party's right to appeal, but nonetheless, it is under the inseverability